Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson. You are watching my walkthrough for The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild for Nintendo Wii U and Switch. So for the last several videos, I've just been running around Hyrule, unlocking all the towers and getting some iconic warping locations that are going to be things we're going to be using, unlocking things we need throughout the game. So for this video, what we're going to be doing is working our way to the Woodland Tower and then also the Korok Woods, the Korok Forest, otherwise called the Great Forest of Hyrule. And that will gain us access to Hestu so that we can spend our Korok seeds to get upgrades, and that would be a very handy thing to get as soon as possible so that we at least have that option as we're adventuring and getting Korok seeds, we can then spend them. So that's what we're going to be doing for this particular video. So I recommend you go to the wetland stable, and then if you have the ancient horse gear, you can summon your horse here. Otherwise, use the nearby stable to bring your horse to this location so that you can start working your way north. Along the way, I did spot an electric key, so I stopped real quick to defeat it because we're going to need some electric keys wings in order to upgrade the climbing gear, and you don't see these guys very often. I think they actually only come out at night, and that might be one of the reasons is that I'm constantly changing it to day whenever I can, whenever I'm at a campfire. So it might be just the fact that I keep changing it to day is why I'm not seeing electric keys very much. But anyways, what I recommend you do is just kill them whenever you see them as you're passing by, because we don't actually need that many of them, as opposed to, like, say, fire keys wings and ice keys wings. You need, like, 49 and 50 of those or something like that, and then meanwhile the electric keys wings, you only need 15 to get all the upgrades in the game. So if you just kill them in passing when they're convenient, if you see one, to just stop real quick and kill it, then you can grab their wings, and that would probably get you a good way towards the quota of what we need to get in this game. Anyway, continue working your way north, and eventually you'll get to the Woodland Stable. Now, as a comment, you could possibly see Hestu here as he's working his way towards the Korok Forest. However, we're on our way to the Korok Forest anyway, so even if you could talk with him if you want and buy some upgrades. However, we are working our way north towards the forest where he's going to eventually be anyways, so we're very quickly going to gain access to that, and you can just purchase stuff from him at that point. So whatever you want to do. Now, once you arrive at the stable, though, you want to continue on towards the right. Just right of it, there is a lower area that has the Mirro Shaz shrine. One of the things I like to do at the beginning of this shrine is I just use the paraglider to get down initially. You don't have to wait for this elevator at all, so I just fall down and then just use that to break my fall. Anyways, how this works is there is a crystal switch nearby which will then replace the orb. Otherwise, the orb just goes away. Like, it falls in the water and it's gone. You have to replace it every single time with the crystal switch to make it redispense, which is really annoying because then you have to go over and hit it. It might even be smarter, actually, to hit the crystal switch with your bow and arrow. So if you stay still and then shoot it with your arrow, and then you can use your bow again to aim yourself the direction you want to face, and then cancel out with B, and then that way you can, like, be facing the right direction, be facing perfectly straight forward, you know, by using your bow, and then just cancel out of using your bow and then attack it. And that might be the smartest way to do this. So use stasis on the ball and then hit it with a weapon. Ideally, what you want to use is a two-hander like the iron sledgehammer, especially because there is one in the chest nearby. So you can replace the durability on the one you already have if you used it up. Otherwise, if you don't have one, that's where you can grab one. Now, up ahead, you want to stasis this block and then use the sledgehammer on it again. This will then flip this nearby teeter-tottery thing. Then you just want to go back up top and wait for the cooldown on your stasis, and then use it on this thing again to hold it in place so that you can walk on it. So what happened at this point is I did actually record this shrine multiple times because I messed it up and teleported away, and then I realized I never spoke with the old guy. So anyways, I'm going to splice these recordings together though. So what you want to do next is, instead of talking to the old guy, you want to go behind and go to the left where there is some extra goodies, and again, you can just jump down. You don't have to actually take this elevator. But here there is another one of those crystal switches which will redispense the ball if you mess it up or whatever. But then what I did here is I was trying to use stasis at a distance, so I was backing up a little bit so that I could, after I used stasis, I could walk forward. The reason for this is so I could get my position pretty darn straight, was the reasoning I was doing this for. I thought that was pretty clever of me. But anyways, again, there is a chest nearby that has an iron sledgehammer in it, so that can replace the one you're using. Unfortunately, I feel like the angle of the two-hander is bad for this particular one, so I actually think that either a one-hander or a spear is a lot easier to use. One-handers in particular. So the arc on them, that it shoots out the ball, is a little bit different, so I think a one-hander is a little bit better for this particular puzzle. So I actually ended up switching to a royal broadsword after a little bit because it has such high durability, and I figured that would be smart. The problem with two-handers, or not necessarily the problem, the difference between them is that a two-hander will shoot things straight. It shoots them really far. Meanwhile, a one-hander will shoot it up a little bit, has more of an arc to it, so it goes up and then falls back down again. And so as a result, the problem is with this particular puzzle is you have to get so much force between it. It's like such a fine line between being like not quite enough power or too much power, and then it bounces over the platform you're trying to reach. so it can make it a little bit awkward. So I decided to instead just switch to a one-hander, and that worked pretty good. So in the end, this worked a lot better for me. So one of the things I'm doing too is I'm kind of looking at my feet. Notice the tiles right there? So I'm trying to stand in the middle of those square tiles right before I get to the ball, so that my feet are standing on. See those square tiles right there? So I'm just trying to make sure I'm standing right in the middle of them, and then walk towards the ball, so I'm standing right there. Now, as far as the number of hits it took for me, with a one-hander anyways, it was 11 hits with the sword. Ended up being just the right distance to make it land properly. So as long as my feet are lined up and I hit it 11 times with a one-hander, I got in there really, really good. So hopefully those tips will help you guys. Again, the chest nearby contains an iron sledgehammer, so you can replace the one you already have to replenish the durability if you like. I'd like to do this whenever I can, or just whenever it's convenient, because in this way I never have to go out of my way to get them, because you just get them occasionally anyways, and unless you're doing a whole bunch of puzzles like this in a row, then usually you have more than enough durability to last forever. Or yeah, you know what I mean? You're just replacing them whenever it's convenient, then you're good to go and you don't have to worry about it. The chest for this shrine contains a giant ancient core, one of the few that are in this game, and they're really, really valuable, so I highly recommend you grab this. Totally worth doing this puzzle. I will say though, the positioning of it can be really, really awkward, so this can be a really frustrating puzzle, but yeah, this is kind of the thing. That's what I would recommend. Is my tips for this is stand on the square tiles. If you have to shoot the crystal switch with an arrow or something like that, that's fine, or whatever you want to do. But then when you're getting ready to start again, position your back up just a little bit, then use stasis on the ball, and then walk forward just a smidge, and that guarantees that Link is facing forward as opposed to at an angle. Because if you are, yeah, I don't know, even though you're using stasis, I just want to make sure that Link is totally facing forward. It's actually a trick from a lot of other games, especially for using bomb shoes in Ocarina of Time, for example. It's a little trick of just making sure you walk forward and compare yourself to the floor is a really good way to make sure that you are successful with the bomb shoe bowling alley, for example. So anyways, it was similar principles to this. That's where I got the tricks for that. I guess the most extreme example of that in the Zelda series, in my opinion, is actually in the same game. Eventually we're going to gain access to some snowball bowling. I'll get that in a few videos from now, but that will allow us to make a bunch of rupees really fast if you want to. I don't think it's the best location in the game, but it's pretty decent as far as the speed at which you can get rupees, but it's pretty good. But anyways, I have a trick for that so that you can get a perfect strike every time, and it involves camera angle and movement at just the right way. It's a very specific trick that I've never seen anybody else do it the way that I do it. I'm sure other people have figured it out too, but the method that I use I think is very untraditional. However, it works really, really good, and it's very easy to do it properly and guarantee that you get a strike every time. So next, what I ended up doing is I made a campfire inside the nearby stable and just changed the time of day repeatedly until it stopped raining. It kept raining over and over again, and then finally it stopped. So now I'm hopped back on my horse and I'm continuing on to the north. There's a road that leads to the west and one that leads to the north. We're going north, and there is the Woodland Tower just to our left. Now, there are two ways to get to it. Now, the easiest way, in my opinion, is actually to climb the nearby mountain, because there's a mountain just to the right, and it's very easy to climb, actually, but that gives you some elevation, so you can just fly directly to the tower, and you don't have to deal with all these enemies at all. And I know what you're thinking. You're watching this video right now and thinking to yourself, man, all these people just fly into the Woodland Tower all easy mode, bunch of noobs. I'm gonna do it the hard way, because I like my challenge. But don't worry, I accounted for your self-inflicted torment. I'm here for you. So all you have to do if you want to attack them directly is just shoot the explosive barrels with fire arrows. Works really good. Ideally, you use a sniper bow, so one of those ones that has increased range, such as the Phrenic bow. Phrenic bows are cheap. They don't do a lot of damage, but it doesn't matter in this case, so shoot those explosive barrels. It's a lot of fun. And something else you can do with that moblin, too, by the way. What I ended up doing here is just using magnesis on this metal crate. More than good enough to do this. But otherwise, something else you can do that works pretty good is you can just use the blizzard rod on that moblin, and then while it's frozen you can just push it with your body into the tar and it will just drown and die, which is great, although you don't get any of the monster parts that way if you do that. This is a fire whiz rope, and as a result it can be killed with ice arrows very easily, so if you just charge up one of those you can kill it in one shot, so don't worry about it too much. There's a lot of other things you could do, or you could try and headshot it or whatever. It's just easier to use the appropriate elemental arrow, especially because I find myself with an abundance of frost arrows as the game progresses, so I don't end up needing them very much anyway. So if you're not going to use them for something like this, when are you going to use it, you know? But yeah, that method's nowhere near as intimidating as it seems at first glance. It's just kind of scary, if you're low level and you're seeing all those black enemies, you're like, oh man, black moblins and black bokoblins, I don't know, man, they hit me so hard, you know? But yeah, you don't have to fly, you can totally just fight your way through them. Elemental arrows are the easiest way to do this, though. Just take advantage of the terrain and stuff, use it to your advantage, and you're good to go. Once you finally get to the top, you can unlock the shrine with whichever one of those methods suits your fancy. All right, Woodland Tower right here. So Woodland Tower be like... all along here, and then it's like goes through here, gets all this canyon stuff here, and then it's like goes through the water, and then poof, there you go, woodland. There you go. It's basically woods. Little area north of woods, little area left of woods. There you go. Boom. There's woodland. So first of all, one of the most important pins to know here is there is a royal claymore that is on top of the tower itself. So there's like a skull surrounding this thing. If you climb the side of the skull and then get on top of it, there's a royal claymore that's like stuck in the top of the skull, and you can just grab it. So this is a very high-end like end game weapon, and it reappears every blood moon, and it's super easy. You can get it within like 10 seconds of warping to the shrine or something. It's super easy. So great weapon. Yeah, it's just great early game especially. So also similarly nearby there is a dragon bone vocal club. This is just kind of an okay weapon, but if you're going bone spec, it's pretty nice. I still think overall at that point, even with the bonus of the set bonuses though, dragon bone boko clubs are just not very good because it doesn't scale that well. Royal weapons are better in that particular category. But anyways, if you really want to use bone weapons, then that's a good location to get one. Other things that are worthwhile nearby, similarly weapons. In the Korok Forest, or the Great Forest of Hyrule, aka whatever you want to call it here, in the Korok Forest, just to the side of the shrine, there's like a log of the Deku Tree right here, big old log thing, and you can climb over it, and there is a Forest Dweller Spear right there. So I know it's kind of hidden, but you just climb over the log, boom, there's a Forest Dweller Spear. So if you really want a wooden spear, that's where you can get that. The trial over here, where you have to sneak through and only use Korok weapons, you can come back there afterwards, and these reappear every blood moon. So you can get the sword, shield, and bow of the Forest Dweller variety right here. Just south of the shrine here, the Keo Ruug shrine in the Korok Forest, there is a tree that's like right behind, what's his face? You know, Hestu, whatever. So just behind him, there's like this clump of trees. I don't know how to explain, but you can walk into the middle of the tree itself. It's like it has roots going every which direction, and right underneath it, there is a Korok leaf. Now, there's a couple different Korok leaves behind you, in particular, like behind the Deku Tree, like back here, there's one of them. It's kind of hard to get to, but anyways, that's the easiest one. It's right next to the shrine, super easy to grab. It's right out in the open, and can't miss it. So I would just recommend you pin those. Now, other things that are nearby, there's not really that much else left worth pinning around here in the Woodland Tower area. So a couple things is, there's iron shrooms over here. I don't think iron shrooms are all that great, especially you can get armored porgies down here near Cape Kales, whatever, at the Muajim shrine. So if you go over here and get all these guys, boom, with lightning arrows, shock arrows, whatever, super good. You can get so many tier 3 ingredients. So tier 2 armor ingredients I don't think are worthwhile. But if you don't want to spend a bunch of money on shock arrows or whatever, or you just really like the iron shrooms, this is the best place in the game to get them, in my opinion. How you do this is just warp to the shrine and just go here and just kind of zigzag back and forth. And you can collect all these shrooms. They're super easy. There's like hardly any enemies here at all. There's like just a single Bokoblin or something. It's nothing. You can just run right past him. And then maybe there's like a couple wolves or something. I don't even think there's even that. But anyways, you can get a whole bunch. I think there's like 20, I want to say off the top of my head, iron shrooms here, which is great. They're pretty close together because they're all just right next to the road, and they're like, I don't know, it's just super easy and great. Also, I think these are noteworthy for a pin, is the stealth fin trout. Those are one of the harder things to find in the game. They're kind of awkward, but basically the thing is just they're all around the mist near the Great Forest of Hyrule. So the best place in the game, in my opinion, to get them is Lake Saria, however you want to pronounce that. And you can just warp to the shrine, grab all these stealth fin trout inside this pool, and then just come back every blood moon. So you don't have to get them all at once. That's the easiest way to get them by far, because they're just in a very condensed area, and you can warp right there. And so it doesn't take it's a very small time commitment. Now, in my experience, usually they spawn somewhere between 1 and 5 here. It's usually more like 3 on average is what it is. But sometimes you could have just 1 every time, and it's just lame. You come back every blood moon, you're like, great, I got 1. Boo, you know. And you can also get a bunch of Sneaky River snails here as well. But otherwise, the best place to find them, this is the fastest way if you're not in a time crunch. If you want to get them all at once and just get it over with, the other way to get stealth fin trout is just in all this whole like moat surrounding the Great Forest of Hyrule. And how this works is they're just in little clusters, like out here in the middle of the water. There'll be like 2. There's 2 here, there's like 2 here, and there's 2 here, and there's 2 here, like that. They're just spaced pretty evenly apart, actually, the whole distance, all the way around. So what you do is, ideally what you do is you just walk along the shore. So you just walk. You look in the distance, you see them, put them as your sensor object, whatever, swim out to them, or use a Cryonis block, swim over there, like blow them up with bombs to make sure they're not going to go anywhere. Or wear a stealth outfit, for example. You make no noise when you're swimming with a stealth outfit. So you can do that, and then you can go and grab them. So just keep doing that, go along the whole thing. Anyway, stealth fin trout are a rare item. That's why I'm talking about them. So this is the best places to grab them. That's pretty much it as far as Woodland. There's not really anything else. There's not like notable things that are nearby. This is actually part of Hyrule Field, but just a quick refresher. You can get Flame Spears by killing the Stalnox here at night, and then otherwise you can get the Blizzard Rod in particular here just south of the Namika Oz Shrine here in Krenel Hills, and that's the most valuable of the various like higher tier Wizrobe items here is definitely the Blizzard Rod. It's technically a part of Hyrule Field, but it's close to Woodland Tower is why I'm bringing it up, but yeah, that's pretty much all the goodies here in Woodland Tower. Now, as long as we're here, there's some valuables we can grab nearby. There's 5 things you can grab real quick that are very close to this tower, so you can just simply warp to the tower, then go down and grab a chest, and then warp back to the tower to try again. The first thing is the fact that there's a chest containing 100 rupees, which, again, I don't really think that's super great to go out of your way, but it's so close to the tower, and it's really easy to get, so you might as well. It's pretty safe. And then, likewise, the most important thing, though, is there is a chest that is in the tower that you can grab using Magnesis. This is a little bit awkward because enemies can shoot you as well, so just kind of dodge back and forth, but this chest contains a Star Fragment. Star Fragments are pretty rare. There's only a couple of them in chests in the entire game, so they're pretty rare. You can, like, farm for them, too, but it's kind of awkward and time-consuming and stuff, so being able to get one in a chest is super convenient. Also nearby, there is some of these, like, platforms that have all the enemies on them, and some of them have some gems in them real quick, so you can grab them, which is really nice. So there's the wooden chest right here just to the right, so you can grab that to get a sapphire, and there's also a ruby in the nearby chest above. Probably would have been smarter for me to do it the other way around, so that I could get the higher one first. But anyways, I'm just going to run the long way around, climb these nearby posts, and then open this chest too. The last thing you should grab before moving on is just on top of Woodland Tower itself. It has this like half skull thing, and on top of that there is a Royal Claymore that's sticking out of it, and you can just grab it with A really easily. It's not inside a chest or anything, which means that because it's just sitting out by itself, it will reappear every blood moon. This is one of the easiest royal weapons to grab because it's so close to a warp point. You can get it within like 15 seconds, and so it's really quick, and it's a good weapon. It has a really high amount of durability. It's straight up physical damage, and it's a two-hander, which means that it hits really hard. Very good in combination with the Blizzard Rod, and it's like pretty good for most of the game anyways. There's only like a few weapons that are even better than it, and I totally should have replaced the Edge of Duality that I currently have in my inventory. I'm not really sure why I did not grab it in this particular recording. I was planning to. I must have just spaced it, and I was distracted by my next objective. So if you hop back on your horse and continue along that road to the north, you'll eventually lead to this little narrow ravine, which leads to the Lost Woods. Now, as soon as you enter, you'll start seeing a bunch of floating moats, which just like it does in the Lost Woods in several of the other Zelda games. But yes, Lost Woods, this area tends to, like in all the Zelda games, you can get lost very easily, and you have to start over again from the beginning. And this game's no different. Now, they do give you a torch pretty early on, which is sort of implied that you're going to use a torch to figure out which way to go through here. What you'll find is that the sparks, or the embers of the flame, I should say, will then go in the direction of the wind. And you don't always have these torches that you can follow either. So generally the idea is that you're going to be using the wind to try and figure out which way you're going to go. Now, as a comment, it's not the embers themselves that tell you where to go, it's the wind that tells you where to go. So you don't actually need a torch, because if you look at the floating moats and the wind themselves, you'll notice that the moats are moving in the same direction as the embers are. So you don't actually need a torch. It's a little bit less confusing. It's not as obvious, but you can just hold still for a little bit and watch the moats and see which direction they're going. So apparently if you're standing too close to an open source of flame, this will set your horse on fire. I was not expecting this to set my horse on fire, but whatever, so sorry horsey, you took some damage. That surprised me. I did not realize that was even a thing, but apparently that's bad, so don't stand too close to those things. So I'm continuing on towards the next objective. Here there are 2 torches together, as well as a regular torch that we can pick up as well, so if you want to replace the durability on yours, you can do that real quick. Now at this point there's not going to be any more like standalone torches that are burning, so you're going to have to just pay attention to the wind, and by either using your fire or just paying attention to the moats that are floating in the wind. Now it's going to keep changing direction though, so you're going to have to constantly adjust for it. Now real quick though, before you continue onwards, there is a DLC chest that you can grab real quick. So I'm going to actually go back to these 2 torches and show you where that is. From this location, just look at your mini-map in the corner. You just want to basically go due south. Most of the Lost Woods you will get stuck, or you'll get lost and you'll have to start over again from the beginning, but there's a couple places where the path like veers off a little bit, where there's a safe walkable place, and this is one of those. So if you continue on towards the south, it's like south by a little bit southwest, then you'll eventually come to a tree that has an open mouth. Now inside the mouth there is a chest, which is again DLC only, and this will get you the Korok mask. What this does is it will shake and make noise when there are nearby Koroks, so this allows you to track them all down if you are not going to be using one of the interactive maps that are online. So next you just want to continue back to the north and go back to those 2 torches. Now at this point I was feeling a little bit stubborn because I thought to myself, you know what? I don't think most people bring a horse in here. It's probably kind of crazy and like nobody would do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm curious. Is the horse going to make me get lost? Can I only go through the Keo Ruug Woods by myself, or will it cause something weird? Turns out it's totally fine. You can totally bring a horse through here, which I thought was kind of amusing. I was kind of pleased with myself as I was recording this, but it is a lot more awkward. In fact, it's fairly difficult to maneuver through here. The horse is just too fast. It just moves way too quickly. I do kind of find it a little bit exhilarating though, just going from torch to torch like whoosh. But it is a lot harder to like stop and pay attention to the wind and stuff. But yeah, when you're done messing around, we want to return to the 2 torches, and then at this point you can light your torch on fire if you want, but all you have to do is just follow the wind. So you can follow the motes of fire on your torch if you want. Otherwise, you want to just hold still and look at the motes that are floating in the air. And just keep traveling for a while and just stop every once in a while. Once it looks like the motes or your embers are going a different direction, you want to stop and go that direction instead. So as you'll notice on screen, I went a little bit too far, but the motes have definitely changed direction as well as the embers from my torch. So just turn in that direction and then go for it unless you set yourself on fire, and then things are bad. Burn like the wind, Bullseye! I have no idea what's going on here. This is ridiculous. I think it's just the fact that I like rotated my horse and the wind was blowing the fire in the direction of my horse's head is what happened, and so once they were in contact for too many seconds, then my horse got caught in fire, I think is what happened. I don't know. I could actually grab my horse again, but whatever, it's too late. So what I'm doing now is I'm just following the motes instead, and it works totally fine. It's not really that hard, as you'll see it easily. You can easily tell that it switched directions, and I'm already here at the exit. So there you go. That's how you get through the Lost Woods, minus the setting yourself on fire, of course. That was totally an accident. I didn't mean to do that, right? Wink, wink. I'm thinking at the same time, though, it can't actually be called a genuine Breath of the Wild experience unless you set yourself on fire on accident a few times. Or on purpose, as the case may be. So my first order of business upon arriving is feeding my horse some apples as a way of apology for inflicting it with third-degree burns that'll scar it for the rest of its life. Not once, but twice in a row, because I'm just that kind of guy, apparently. I'm actually not sure if apples heal your horse or not, but I figured it'd be better to be on the safe side. You know, maybe I should give him 2, considering all the trouble I've caused and because he got burned twice, but at the same time, I just don't want to waste one of the 114 remaining apples I have in my inventory right now. They're just so hard to come by, you know? So I don't think my stallion is planning any kind of revolt or anything that could disobey my orders, I suppose. But other than that, I don't think that horses in Breath of the Wild have any way of hurting you after you claimed them and stuff as your own. I suppose the only one that's really risky is actually just the intro to Majora's Mask, right? Because Epona knocked Link to the ground for a while. So I suppose that all being said, the only horse we really need to keep an eye on and be careful of is going to be Epona. But just so you know, you can actually summon her in Breath of the Wild using Amiibo. So just use that Amiibo with great care. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, but Caleb, in the game it says she has a gentle temperament. To which I have just one thing to say to you. At heart, she is actually a chestnut. But I don't think she's actually... Do not fall for their lies! So one of the first things you should do once you get to Korok Forest is get the teleport point, and you might as well do the Keo Ruug Shrine, it's pretty easy. So how this works is you'll see there's constellations on either side of us, and you want to look at the constellation and then look at the back wall and count how many of them there are. So the first constellation is those 3 little ones together, and there are 5 of them on that wall. So what we want to do is we want to grab one of the orbs and put it in the slot that is marked with the correct number of torches. So this far one has 5 torches because there are 5 constellations on the wall. Look at the next constellation in the next column and count how many there are on the back wall, and then move the orb to that slot. But yeah, you get the general idea. You just count the constellations for each one of the slots and then count them on the back wall and put the orbs in the appropriate hole. So that's how this works. One comment I have to make about this game in general, I feel like this shrine in particular really emphasizes this a lot, is that the design philosophy they took for this particular game is very different. And it almost feels to me like they have some new team members on the development team, and so which is adding some fresh blood and thus fresh ideas and stuff, which is good. That's a great thing. One of the things I think is a little bit strange is how it feels, I'm not even trying to put this into words, it feels like we no longer have traditional Zelda puzzles, but instead we have riddles. So you're trying to figure out what's even going on in the first place. So this shrine, they have a clue about constellations, and you're trying to figure out what that even means. Once you finally figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, I got it. But it's just, and then it's just a matter of doing the thing. But meanwhile, in other Zelda games, it's more like, how do I do this thing? You know what I mean? Like, you're presented with something, you're like, okay, I need to get from point A to point B. This game doesn't really work like that. Now, before you finish up this shrine, if you go through the doorway and then turn around, you'll see there's actually some constellations on the wall that we just came through. So what you're going to do is count the constellations, and once again, move the orbs into the appropriate slots, and what this will do is it will unlock a doorway that leads to some goodies. So yeah, going back to my previous discussion though, I also feel like enemies are a great example of this too. Like the past two Zelda games, Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, as far as 3D games anyways, had a lot of like really in-depth, you know, sword combat, and sometimes using other items in close range and stuff. Like Skyward Sword, you'd use a slingshot on an enemy's head or whatever. So it's not a matter of can you use a slingshot or not. You have to use it in the right way, and that's like part of the whole puzzle element of it. But enemies in this game aren't really puzzles anymore. You can kind of just do whatever you want. You have all these weapons and you just kind of flail on them and you just win. And it's kind of like the reward they give to you is the fact that you even have the items in the first place, because you have to explore and find them in the first place. So you feel happy about being overpowered because you have a bunch of bomb arrows, or you have a really awesome royal weapon, or whatever the thing is, and that's like more your rewards this game. So the deal is almost too that it's all about exploration, it's all about finding stuff, it's all about giving you as many options as possible, giving you all these tools, and you get to decide how you want to do it, which is cool. That's cool in and of itself. But it's kind of like the puzzle element has almost been removed entirely, because enemies don't have those whole limitations anymore. Instead, you can do anything to them. And so enemies aren't really a puzzle anymore at all. Meanwhile, a lot of the more traditional puzzles, as I would call them, for like the shrine, for example, is not like it was in previous Zelda games. Like before, you'd walk into a room, you'd see a switch, and you're like, okay, I need to put a block on top of it to hold it down. You don't do stuff like that in this game very much. Instead of a matter, the question used to be, how do I get the block here, or where is the block that I need to put on the switch? Instead, in this game, the questions have changed to more like, what is the block, why is the block, and who is the block? It's like, those are the kinds of questions we're asking instead. So it's just changed entirely, and I think that's just a reflection of the fact of the open-ended nature of Breath of the Wild. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say, like, some of the only, like, traditional puzzles left anymore is some of the dungeons a little bit, but for the most part, actually just the dungeon bosses. But even them, they have some really open-ended mechanics for them, and you can fight them a variety of ways. In fact, like arrows, if you buy enough or farm enough arrows for any of the bosses, you just win. You just do. There's nothing they can do about it. So which is kind of cool, I guess, but at the same time, I wish that they were only vulnerable for specific phases or something instead, or I don't know. I sort of like the whole puzzle aspect of like trying to stun them and stuff is part of what I think was really cool about bosses in Zelda games. It's like doing a bunch of damage in a set period of time. Anyways, what do you guys think about all those observations? Would you agree with my assessment of like, we switched from puzzles to riddles? Would you agree with that assessment? And what are your guys' thoughts on all that? Anyways, now that we have access to Korok Forest, one of the things that has happened is that Hestu can be found here from now on. So regardless of where he was in Hyrule before, he arrives here right after you arrive here as well, and now he'll be here from now on. So you can buy upgrades with him with Korok seeds, and that's a super great thing. So you should totally do that just every once in a while, and I would totally recommend you do it right now. Spend all the seeds you have and continue collecting them. As far as which slot too, I think definitely the most valuable upgrade in general is going to be the regular melee weapon stash. We just have so many melee weapons we need, even just for torches and stuff, it's just so important. Next, if you continue on towards the east and then follow this path north, this leads to a log with some wooden weapons leaning up against it. These particular ones are only actually available after you complete this Korok's quest, but these will reappear every blood moon. So we can get a Forest Dweller, sword, shield, and bow here, and there's also a spear just to the left of the shrine on the other side of a root next to the Great Deku Tree. So there is one of all of the Forest Dweller tier weapons and stuff here, which is great, and these are useful for either when you're fighting shock enemies or if you want to use them during a thunderstorm so you don't get zapped with lightning. So it's useful in either one of those cases. Now there are some Dragon Bone weapons eventually we will have access to, and those will be better in particular cases, in particular if you're going for the Radiant or Phantom Ganon set, and that would be useful as well. So next, continuing onwards, you want to head toward the Master Sword in the middle to fill up our quest log. This will also initiate some cutscenes that are pretty fancy, so I will just remain silent for the next little bit. So enjoy these, and I'll see you afterwards.
Link, you are our final hope. The fate of Hyrule rests with you.
Who is that? Did I doze off again? Well. It's you. You finally decided to return. Better late than never. After 100 years, I'd nearly given up hope on seeing you again. Even my patience has limits, you know. That look on your face tells me that you have no recollection of me, however. I have watched over Hyrule since time immemorial. Many have referred to me over the ages as the Deku Tree. That is the weapon created by the ancient goddess. The sword that seals the darkness that only the chosen knight can wield against the Calamity Ganon. Believe it or not, it was actually you who wielded that sword 100 years ago. But I must warn you to take extreme caution. The sword stands as a test to anyone who would dare attempt to possess it. As you are now, I cannot say whether you are worthy or not. If you sought to free the sword in any sort of weakened state, you would surely lose your life where you stand. Best of luck, young one.
So once you regain control of your hero, you can go ahead and press A on the Master Sword and then press and hold A, and this will then hurt you. It consumes your hearts in order to allow you to pull out the sword. Now, what'll happen though is you'll probably be interrupted because the first time you come here, chances are you don't have enough hearts. You're going to need 13 heart containers total, and by the way, yellow heart containers don't count towards this, only the regular red ones do. So, you're going to need 13 heart containers, which takes a lot. That means we're going to have to complete quite a few shrines in order to accomplish this. Now, one other quick tip for you though is you can trade heart containers and stamina vessels back and forth by speaking with the cursed statue that's in Hitino. I will be showing that later on in this walkthrough in order to swap my stamina vessels to heart containers temporarily to allow me to get the Master Sword as soon as possible. That does require a hefty amount of rupees though, so until we have some good farming locations we can't really do that, but we still need enough total shrines completed to have enough heart containers otherwise in addition to that, so we're not actually, don't have access to that just yet. But once we do, I will be showing you as soon as that's available. Now as far as other things to do in Keo Ruug Forest, there is some hot-footed frogs just around here in puddles, and I think a lot of people forget that those are here. Also, I think a lot of people tend to forget the fact that there is a shop inside the Great Deku Tree, and you can buy a bunch of arrows and shock arrows there as well. So just remember that for the future. But yeah, we have access to that shop, we have Hestu, we have the Master Sword here, so these are all things that we're going to be using later on. But yeah, that'll conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and found it helpful, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. Remember to stay awesome, you have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.